Hi all, John at Bauhaus Performance. Today we're going to be going over braking techniques and how to master the brakes on track. For today's sections, we're going to go over the importance of effective braking, types of braking, how to brake properly on track, common braking mistakes, advanced braking tips, and how to practice and improve your braking. With that, let's get into it. So let's start with the importance of effective braking. Braking is more than just slowing down. What it's going to do is set up your entry into the corner, right? So making sure that you're braking correctly is critical to your lap time. It's going to define the corner itself as a win or, a loss. Good braking technique also improves your lap time and car control. So when you're getting on the brakes and you're braking, obviously you're moving the weight of the car in one way or another. So, your brakes can really be critical to how the car is going to balance itself throughout the corner. And then common beginner mistakes like braking too early, too soft, or too late are really things that, are going to make huge inroads into reducing your lap time. So we'll go over some of those techniques and go over some examples to help you, avoid some of those common beginner mistakes. So let's go over a few concepts with braking. One is going to be threshold braking. So threshold braking is when you're maximizing the force of the brakes and the ability for the tires to transfer that into braking force without locking up your tires in a non-ABS car or engaging ABS. So ABS and, depending on the system, and of course locking up is going to not slow you down as fast as threshold braking, which is basically, managing your car, managing the brakes so they're at the very limit of their braking potential. The ABS system is going to, depending on a car, more street car, right? Once you hit ABS, your car is detecting a lockup, and what it's going to do is disengage the brakes slightly and then re-engage to the point where they lock up, which is where you get that pushing through the pedal. There's also trail braking. Trail braking is when you carry some braking force in the corner itself to help shift the weight forward and maintain some grip on those front tires while you're in the mid corner. And then, alleviating that braking force when you're coming out of the corner to start evenly shifting it more towards the rear so that you have more of that exit grip to maximize your exit of the corner. And then straight line braking is going to be the safest method for beginners. Once you start introducing your brakes into, a non-neutral position on the wheel, there's more risk in terms of, rotating the rear or locking up. So straight line braking is really what you want to focus on if you're a complete beginner on track. You want to focus on, as much as possible, keeping that wheel straight while you're braking until you can kind of introduce some braking in the actual turning. So for how to brake properly on track, there are 4 main points that we want to go over. The first one is going to be braking a straight line whenever possible. This is going to ensure that you don't overload one tire as opposed to another. When you're turning, there's going to be more weight on the outside tire. So that's going to introduce more of a lockup risk. So braking in a straight line is going to be the safest way for you to manage your braking to ensure that you're not going to lock up. So when you're starting out on track, your first track day, focus on braking in a straight line whenever possible, and that's going to give you the most controllable experience. When you are braking, you want to apply a firm initial pressure. You don't want to stab at the pedal, but you do want to be, you want to have finesse to make sure that it's very firm getting on the brakes, but you're also not jumping directly into a lockup position to the point where the weight hasn't transferred all the way to the front wheels yet. From there, you want to ease off as needed. So this is when you're going to, if you do introduce yourself into a lockup position, you want to lift a little bit to back where you have some grip and then modulate that pedal to see when you can get back to the limit of the tires. And then at the point where you're entering the corner, You don't want to just jump off the brake pedal. You want to slowly release the brake pedal so that you have maximum control over the weight transfer of the car going towards the rear. You want to avoid stabbing the brakes. Stabbing the brakes with your foot is going to introduce more bounce to the suspension. You're going to be shifting the weight forward and rear if you're really aggressive with your brake pressure. So you want to be very, smooth and deliberate. Have some finesse on the pedal, and don't be super aggressive. You want to be firm but not aggressive. And that's kind of a balance that you need to find with your car, and you'll kind of start to feel it. You also don't want to drag the brakes. So dragging the brakes, having a little bit of pressure, especially when you're, kind of potentially in the mid corner or something like that, or on turn in, you don't want to necessarily drag the brakes, because that's just going to introduce more heat into those brakes, so that for the next turn in phase, you're not going to have you could potentially overload the brakes. And then you want to use brake markers and reference points on how to judge when and where to brake. Those will flex, right? Of course, when you're, if you have a nice exit out of the previous corner. But a reference point will be critical to, developing some consistency. For your brake markers and reference points, you also don't want to use something that is able to change. So for example, one thing that some people will do is use potentially a shadow on track or something like that as a brake marker. Of course, if you're going in the morning and you develop all your brake markers, you mark up your track map, and then you come out in the afternoon, those shadows will not be there. So you want to have, repeatable brake markers that you can use to ensure that you're consistent on where you're going to brake. Let's go over some common braking mistakes. So braking too early and too late, of course, is going to be the most common. That does happen for, everyone, right? So it's about finding that sweet spot. The main thing that you want to do is, especially if it's a new track, new car, what have you, you want to, push yourself to the limit, but you also want to kind of creep into it, right? So, start at a far out marker. If you have your 50-yard board, your 40-yard board, everything like that. Start at the 50. Okay, 50 feels good. Go to 45. 45 feels good. Keep progressing until you find out where that spot is, and then you're gonna manage that depending on how your exit was. You had a really good exit in the last corner. Okay, we might need to brake a little bit earlier. Not braking hard enough is also a very common mistake. So especially if you're coming from driving street cars, you're jumping on track for the first time. What you may have an issue with is really maximizing your tires and your braking. And what that's going to do, obviously, is just leave lap time on the table. So you want to be, brake hard, right? Your car is a tool. So you want to make sure that you're, braking hard. And it's going to feel unusual if you're coming from a street car environment. But that's what we're here to do. You're also hopefully not flooring it in your street car. So, when your car makes it on track, it's a different animal. It's not, something that you're going to baby. So make sure that you're hard on track. Make sure that your car is the limiting factor, not you. And then another common mistake is going to be overslowing the car. So you're dropping your speed too low for the entry into the corner. Especially when you get more advanced, this can be a common thing that happens is, you're slowing your car down too far, where you have an inconsistent or too low of a speed in the mid corner or entry into the corner. And it's really, easy, or it's really helpful to find some time, especially if, all other phases of the corner are going well, that you might be leaving some entry speed onto the table. So, play with those braking marks and play with your speed to see, where the car is reaching the limit as opposed to yourself. Don't, overslow, drop down to a, insanely low speed into the corner. Find out where that limit is and then try to repeat that. And then if you do have a corner, maybe it's a fast corner that needs a little bit of brakes, you need a little bit of the brakes to get the turn in. You don't want to brake while turning too aggressively, so you definitely don't want to, when you start to turn the wheel, like I said earlier, it's going to introduce some more load into that outside tire, which could lead to a tire overload scenario, leading to some understeer. Or if your balance is pretty far in the rear, it could lead to a spin out, right? So you don't want to do that, where you're overloading, the outside tire or, potentially the rear tires. You want to make sure that, you're braking with a wheel position that's as straight as possible to get the job done. So a few advanced braking tips. You want to use the braking zones efficiently to maximize your corner entry. As we talked about earlier, one of the common mistakes is slowing too much in the braking zone for the corner entry. This can potentially lead to the point where you're actually powering out of the corner before you reach the apex. So that's a good indication if you're seeing on your telemetry that you're starting to power out before you actually reach the apex. You might want to try to carry some more speed into the corner entry. Push your braking markers a little bit to see if you can gain some time there. You also want to adjust your braking points based off your tire wear, temperature, track conditions, everything like that. It's obviously going to be pretty car dependent and track dependent, but as kind of a rule, obviously, if your tires are overheated or too cold, you want to kind of drop your braking points a little further back. If it's the track is way too hot or way too cold, you want to do the same. And then of course, if the track is dusty, it's not green, it's not rubbered in, you want to kind of back that up as well. But the same thing goes for the inverse, right? So your tires are feeling great, you got some fresh boots on, temperatures are right where the car feels great, track conditions nice and rubbered in. You can start to push it, right? And that's where you're going to find your best lap times, is when kind of all those things are coming together, and you're able to use that to maximize your braking and really push the limit. And then there's also the role of the left foot braking. So using your left foot can be really helpful. It's a long right or something like that, and you need just a little bit of braking to get the nose in, but you don't want to actually use a braking zone. So what you can do is just jump that left foot from the clutch pedal to the brake pedal, give it a little bit of pressure, right, to just turn the nose in, and that can really help navigate that corner. The same thing works if you've driven this track a lot and you found you don't need to actually change gear in a particular corner. Jump that left foot over from the clutch pedal to the brake pedal. That's really going to help you with control, where you're able to manage both those inputs, right? And that's the only way that you're going to be able to trail brake, is if you are using left foot braking. So as much as possible, it can be a little daunting, but jump that left pedal over to the brake pedal, or your left foot over to the brake pedal, and practice with a few little stabs and see how it goes, and then try to introduce that into more corners that you're maintaining a set gear for. And so there are a few ways that you can practice and improve your braking. So the first one is going to, use some drills to, improve your confidence. So like I said, kind of start slow, and build that up. That's going to immediately build confidence, right? So drop your braking marker back and really work on, walking the car to the limit. That's going to be really helpful. And then try to introduce some left foot braking in as well. Jump that left foot over from the clutch pedal to the brake pedal, and introduce a little bit of that, a little left foot braking in there, and that'll help you improve some confidence. And then soon enough, you'll be a lot more confident on the brakes, and can really drop some lap time. Of course, it is pretty daunting, or it can be. When your braking is what's controlling your speed, right? You might you scare yourself, but it's really about just building that muscle memory, practicing and feeling out, getting more comfortable with your car. You can also use data and video analysis to help refine your braking performance. So, telemetry is going to be super helpful for this to see, how you're actually braking. Don't just look at your fastest lap, right? Look at your average lap and see, are you being consistent with how you're applying the brakes, or do you have some issues with consistency? And check, some corners you're great and other corners you're very poor. Try to focus on those poor corners for the next session, and try to improve your braking. Your pedal trace should look like kind of almost a bell curve with a high top, right? So it's going to be hard coming on. You're going to have a nice steady pressure with a little modulation, and then smoothly dropping back down into corner entry. And then the best thing that you can do is work with instructors, have them jump in the car, give you some tips. They'll be able to tell you if you're braking too soft or, something like that, too hard. And they can give you some tips on how to improve. You can also use sim racing for additional practice. This can be really helpful for developing some muscle memory around that left foot braking. So I encourage y'all to, get a cheap wheel and some cheap pedals, and just start practicing that, and it'll help introduce, some of that prowess into your actual on-track driving. Well, I hope this video was helpful. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments. If the video was helpful, we appreciate it if you do like and subscribe. Our contact information is below if you want to reach out to us directly. And with that, we'll see you in the next one. All right. Thanks, y'all.